Welcome back to Comics Cuts Live. Got a great show for you guys tonight. Some really exciting things with the post-credit scenes. So the post-credit scenes from Spider-Man Brand New Day and Avengers Doomsday have been leaked. We're going to be getting into that. We got a lot of good stuff with Daredevil, Hulk, Nova, Lanterns. You know I love talking about the Green Lanterns, and Secret Wars. So yeah, let's get this going. Guess I'll give a couple minutes for people to come in here. But yeah, the post-credit leaks are really, really exciting stuff. All right. Like Spider-Man and Doomsday. It's pretty crazy that we got both. So I'm just going to give a couple more seconds for some people to come in here, and then we're going to get right into the post-credits. All right, let's do it. So let's start with Spider-Man. We're going to start with Spider-Man because Spider-Man is coming out first. So the leak suggests that in the Spider-Man Brand New Day, that another planet is going to appear in the sky in front of Earth 616, and it's going to set up the events of Avengers Doomsday. Now, there's a big implication here because Spider-Man Brand New Day has been, first of all, the movie has been getting so many updates that are kind of one way and then the other, and it keeps contradicting itself. And we keep learning more and more about Spider-Man Brand New Day that seems to feel like it's a different movie every single week. But this is kind of making me think of when Kevin Feige had said that Spider-Man Brand New Day is grounded, but he didn't say which Earth it was grounded on. And for a while, I've been saying that Avengers Doomsday is the most ambitious project Marvel has ever made. But it's starting to seem like Spider-Man Brand New Day is also kind of up there with how ambitious Spider-Man Brand New Day seems. Because I do believe that it's going to be somewhat grounded, and they're going to try to make it Peter Parker, New York City, classical Spider-Man movie. But they are not missing the opportunity for Spider-Man Brand New Day to be folded into Avengers Doomsday. I'm telling you that right now. And with this post-credit leak, there's no way this movie's coming out 6 months before Avengers Doomsday, and they're not folding it into that. So this concept also aligns with the Jonathan Hickman story from Avengers Time Runs Out, where the incursions came. Obviously, you saw the other Earth come in at the last incursion, which that was the first issue of Secret Wars too. But yeah, so there's a lot of implications here. And I just think that this is going to be a much bigger movie than we had initially thought with Spider-Man. And it makes sense because, of course, they're going to be concerned with the way box office is going for Marvel right now. They're definitely going to take advantage of Spider-Man Brand New Day being a Spider-Man movie coming out 6 months before Doomsday. It's 100% going to have something to do with it. Okay? So let me see. I had more notes on it. Give me 1 second. No, hold on. This is the actual post-credit scene leak. I'm going to reread it. So after the credits, another Earth appears in the sky above New York. Peter Parker looks on in shock as J. Jonah Jameson yells about the end of the world. A massive energy distortion sweeps through the sky, a visual callback to Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness and Secret Wars incursions. But this one ends on a red flare with the words, "Doomsday is coming." The tone is dark, almost horror-like, clearly hinting that this incursion sets off Avengers Doomsday. And again, the implications obviously that Spider-Man Brand New Day is going to directly set up Avengers Doomsday. The other Earth symbolizes Doom's reconstructed world forming in real time, a precursor to his dominion in the Doomsday scenes. It suggests that Brand New Day will act as the emotional and narrative bridge between street-level Spider-Man stories and multiversal chaos to come. So I'm starting to think Spider-Man Brand New Day is going to be a very ambitious project because it's going to balance that New York style, like, Spider-Man classic story with Marvel still needs this movie to boost Avengers Doomsday. And if you've been watching me for a while, from the old show that I used to do that I've always said that they would probably end up using this movie to push the main MCU story forward because they need to. And with the way box office has been, they have to do it. So, all right, what's up, Hungry Almighty? Hungry, by the way, sent in a fire concept for the Batman movie. We're going to get into that. But anyway, I kind of predicted that the end of Brand New Day would be Spidey seeing another Earth colliding with his. It has to be. It has to be. What are they going to do? Do a post-credit scene of the next Spider-Man movie when no one's even thinking about that at this point? So, yeah, it has to be. So we're getting New York street level Spidey movie plus the return of Angry Hulk and Incursion setup. Sign me up. Seriously, this sounds incredible. Hell yeah. And we got a lot to get into with the Hulk as well because there was a So supposedly the Hulk was taken away by an ambulance on the set of Spider-Man Brand New Day. That means, similar to, I think last week it was when I showed the hole in the wall from the Hulk, seems like there's going to be some crazy action with the Hulk. It seems like they're using Hulk more for the action and not actually the story. I think the Punisher is going to have more to do with the story. I think the Hulk is going to have more to do with spectacle because Marvel still has no idea what to do with the Hulk anyway. Hunter, DC talk is coming. We're going to do some Marvel stuff first, just because the podcast was titled based on the post-credit leaks for Avengers, Doomsday, and Secret Wars. I couldn't tell you an exact time, but it is coming. We got a lot of good stuff for DC tonight too. So if you're into that, it's crazy. I feel like there's a lot of people who are only one fan of DC or Marvel lately. And I said to someone on the other day on Twitter, I was like, for me, like, I just love both, but I get that everyone wants to hear about the DCU at the same time. So, but we're doing Marvel first. Sorry. All right. So yeah, I think the Hulk is going to be spectacle for Spider-Man. I think the Punisher is going to be more of a plot device, which that's what I'm hoping for. I really don't think the Hulk is so great in the MCU. I don't think Mark Ruffalo has brought much to the role. And I think that, Punisher, John Bernthal, he is incredible. Like, I want more Punisher, less Hulk. Hulk, spectacle, fine, it works. Since they are bringing back Savage Hulk, what they need to do is give Hulk the badass, angry, smart personality, like, for example, Green Scar Hulk and Planet Hulk or Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes. Yeah, that would be crazy. It would be cool too, like, because Spider-Man and the Punisher and Hulk fighting each other with Savage Hulk, like, that would be really cool, man. That would be really cool. I still don't think the villain is like Shafra. I still think the villain is going to be Tombstone. I think Tombstone is going to be the main villain. What if Punisher accidentally caused the Hulk to Hulk out? LOL. That would be crazy. I would love to see that, Also, it could be really cool because maybe Frank is like, hey, this guy is a liability. Like, I need to put him down. Maybe Punisher has that outlook, because we all know how he is with his ideology, and he is very unapologetic about his ideology on killing someone when they are a threat to life. But yeah, so the other interesting piece about Spider-Man is Spider-Man will reportedly have a huge role in Avengers Secret Wars. This makes so much sense. I've said for a long time, I don't think he's going to have a big role in Avengers Doomsday. I do think he's going to have a big role in Secret Wars, which, by the way, Infinity War, he had a huge role. And then Endgame, he only showed up at the end because he was dusted by Thanos, and it totally worked. Granted, they had a lot better of an Avengers roster for those movies than we do right now. So it's a little different. It's not exactly the same thing, but I don't think people are going to be missing Spider-Man from Avengers Doomsday because Spider-Man Brand New Day is releasing 6 months before it. So people are going to be happy with Spider-Man. That movie seems like it's going to be incredible. I don't think people are going to be upset that Spider-Man is not having a big role in Avengers Doomsday. Like I said, also the Fantastic Four, the X-Men, the Thunderbolts. People like those characters. I know, Hungry, they are not Iron Man, Captain America, or Thor, but they're still pretty good characters, especially the Fantastic Four. So, but when I saw this, is the first thing I thought of. Hungry Almighty. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Punisher is Bully Banner and is about to kill him with a bullet. And then Banner hulks out, and Frank looks up and is like, oh, shit. Yeah, exactly. So that would be crazy. It kind of sucks that everyone's saying Mr. Negative isn't in it. That's what all the insiders are pretty much saying. Hopefully they're wrong, and that's something Marvel kept it under wraps. What is interesting about the Mr. Negative piece is that earlier on, when they were talking about it, they had said that the costume department was looking at feudal, imperial, Japanese warrior samurai costumes, and it had something to do with an Asian villain. And so everyone thought it was Mr. Negative, and nobody really thought of Silver Samurai. And I'm not sure exactly who, but it was definitely someone pretty credible that said it's going to be Silver Samurai. Silver Samurai is a villain, and that leads me to another point about what people are talking about with the Spider-Man villains. That's really interesting is that Spider-Man has a great rogues gallery, but it's all the lesser known villains that are in the conversation for who's going to be the main villain for Spider-Man Brand New Day. You're hearing names like Shathra. You're hearing names like Tombstone, who's definitely, and even Tombstone is on the better known character villain names of the list. Tombstone is probably the most well known of them. Okay, but everyone else, you're talking about Silver Samurai. You're talking about Shathra. I'm convinced that what's her name? Sadie Sink is playing Julia Carpenter, Madam Web. I think Twitter feels differently, but I don't know. I think I have a pretty good track record, so I stand by my call. How big is the role? Because isn't there some contracting with Sony? Like if they made the Spidey the MCU, wouldn't Sony get most of the money of Doomsday? I don't think Sony would get most of the money of Doomsday. I think Sony gets their share from the Spider-Man movies. If it's a Spider-Man movie, that's where they get their cut. They don't then get to put their hand into the pot for an Avengers movie. But even that, the nature of IP is crazy because could you imagine being Kevin Feige and working to make Spider-Man No Way Home and Sony really not doing much and Sony getting their cut? Like, that's crazy, bro. That is crazy. But that's the value of owning Spider-Man IP. He's one of the most valuable IP on the planet. No, I meant if, let's say, for example, Spidey is the second main character or something along those lines, wouldn't that mean Sony get a good chunk of the profit? I don't know about a good chunk of the profit, but they definitely do get. Yeah, I need to look into that because I could be wrong. I don't. I think the deal is, and I could be wrong on this, but from my understanding, and I probably should refresh myself, but from my understanding is Marvel lets them do the Spider-Man movies with the MCU and gives them the money for that. But I'm pretty sure. Now I'm really curious. Hold on. When Spider-Man appears in an Avengers film, Sony and Marvel Studios share revenue under their unique deal. Here's how it works. Sony owns the movie rights to Spider-Man. Marvel Studios, aka Disney, was granted permission to use Spider-Man in the MCU through a co-production and profit-sharing agreement. For solo Spider-Man movies, like the Home Trilogy, Sony finances and distributes it, while Marvel receives a smaller share, around 25% on the later deal, and retains creative control to integrate him into the MCU. For Avengers or other Spider-Man MCU films where he appears, Marvel Disney finances and distributes the movie. Sony receives compensation or a negotiated share for the use of the character, though much smaller than their full film profits. So yes, Sony does make money when Spider-Man appears in an Avengers movie, but it's a limited licensing or revenue sharing fee, not the full box office share they get from solo Spider-Man films. So yeah, so that's pretty crazy. But obviously, Marvel made sure to have creative control. Hunter, I'm gonna get to your question once I'm doing DC. I'm just want to keep it Marvel with Marvel, but we'll get to DC pretty quickly. But you could still throw in your questions if you got more. Like, just fire them off, and I'll get to them when we do DC. All right, what we got next? Now, Charlie Cox had said that he is not going to be in Spider-Man Brand New Day. He said he's not in it, but he was filming something else when he was in London. Listen, I don't think that means anything. That doesn't impact if I think he's going to be in the movie one way or the other. I still think there's a 50-50 shot. It's the exact split on the decision that I had before Charlie Cox said that, and that's because Marvel keeps things under wraps. Like they went to great lengths to hide that Spider-Man was No Way Home was going to have Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. So of course they already told us basically that Punisher and Hulk are going to be in this movie. If anyone else is going to be in it, I don't think they're going to want to tell us. They're keeping a lot of things very secretive about this movie. We don't know who Sadie Sink is playing. We don't know who the main villain is, confirmed from them. So they're definitely not going to reveal everything. The fact that they've already revealed that Punisher is in it is a big deal. But my thought remains the same, and that is that Daredevil Born Again Season 1 didn't chart on Nielsen. Having said that, Marvel is already greenlighting. They're already doing Season 2, and they've already greenlit Season 3. We know Marvel moves things around in terms of fears for success and performance. I think that the best thing they could do for Daredevil Born Again Season 2's ratings is include Daredevil into Spider-Man Brand New Day, because everyone's going to see that movie. It seems like it's going to be great, and that's how you get more people introduced to a character and then they're caring about it. That's how the MCU has always worked. They've always put other characters into projects and boost those characters in that way. That's how the entire MCU is built. So I don't think they're going to stop with for now for Daredevil when they really need it. But let me see, we got other Daredevil stuff on here. No, this is it. So he said, yeah, I know they all think I'm in Spider-Man because I was filming something in London, which I am not. I'm not in Spider-Man. And then Charlie Cox also talks about Matt Murdock and Karen Page's romance in Daredevil Born Again Season 2. That's an element to this story that I always want to nurture because it's so important, I think, to the Daredevil comics. I love their relationship. She is the love of his life. And so getting to really kind of delve deep into that romance is great fun. I know everyone's talking about this, but like, I don't really care that much about this. I really don't. I think that the show is going to be great. I really liked season 1. I think there's a lot more to look forward to in season 2 based on the finale and the developments of the show. But I don't like, it's not that I don't like Karen Page. I just like, I don't think that's going to make or break the show. I really don't. I'm not one of those guys that gets hung up about the love life of my superheroes. I never was crazy for MJ, never was crazy for Batman, Catwoman. I'm certainly not crazy for Daredevil and Karen Page, okay? I feel like Spidey role in Secret Wars will be essentially what he was in Infinity War and Endgame. I don't think it'll be on the level of what a Tony and Steve was in Infinity War and Endgame. I agree with that because if it was going to be on the level of Tony and Steve, he would have a major role in both movies. I really do think the main star of these movies on the hero side that we've already met is going to be Reed Richards. You know, if you know anything about this story, it is a Reed Richards story. Of all the characters they have, like, you know, you could say Iron Man in Time Runs Out, you could say Captain America in Time Runs Out, but when it comes to Secret Wars, that is Reed Richards, bro. So Reed Richards is going to be big. Doctor Strange is going to be big. Namor could be. T'Challa should be, but they won't even recast him yet. Oh, such a bummer. I do get hang up on the love life depending on the situation. Who are your favorite hero ships, Hungry? So Mark Ruffalo was asked if he wants to make a solo Hulk film, and he said it's not really owned by Marvel. Hulk is a universal property. I don't know if it'll ever really come to be. Honestly, we keep talking about it, what it would be. There's been so many Hulk movies already. There's been 2, bro. Look, it's like, does anyone really even want another one? But I want one. I think audiences would be into it if we could crack it. You know, it's so funny to me. Mark Ruffalo is such an, like, he is intellectually inferior. You know what the worst thing to say is when you want to get a movie made of your character? Does anyone really even want another one? Does anyone even really want it? Imagine you're Kevin Feige and you hear that. It's like, well, if the would-be star of the movie doesn't think the fans want to see this movie, why would we make this movie? You know, like, that is dumb, bro. Yeah, no. But for all Mark Ruffalo's faults, he's kind of right. I don't think fans really care for a Hulk movie. I really don't. I don't. I like, if they were to do World War Hulk or Planet Hulk or something like that, I would actually be excited. I listen, for all the crap I give Mark Ruffalo, I do think he was much better in the earlier movies. Like in Avengers 1, I thought he was great. I really do. But he started to get annoying, and I'm not crazy about the Hulk to begin with, but those are the better Hulk stories. I just don't think it fits into what the MCU is doing now, what it's doing after Secret Wars. Like the Hulk stories that you could do, I don't think it fits in. I really don't. That people would want to see. So, good evening. Yeah, we need a Ruffalo Hulk film. What would you want to see, Kevin? I like I said, listen, you want to do Planet Hulk? Like I do think that could be cool. I just don't think it fits in, and I really don't think the best way to go about getting a Hulk movie is for the star to be saying, "I don't even think people want it." Okay, here's my thing on the love life. Let's look at Spidey and MJ, for example. I understand in One More Day why they did it, but at the same time, it's like you bring them back together only to break them up again. Yeah. And I still don't know why they let Nick Spencer do MJ. Like, so there is one run post One More Day that had Peter with MJ, and that's the Nick Spencer run. And maybe they did it because Kindred. So if you don't know Kindred's like a centipede looking, like creepy villain. And he was a mystery for most of the run. If you want to read it, like it's a really long run. I'm going to spoil who Kindred is. But Kindred ended up being Harry Osborn. You know, Harry Osborn had previously kind of tried to go the right way in Brand New Day, but later on, and Nick Spencer was the first run after Dan Slott's like 10-year tenure on Amazing Spider-Man. They had Peter with MJ, and the only real benefit I would say it had was that Kindred really was an angry, bottled up emotions version of Harry Osborn, and Harry took that out on not just Spider-Man, but MJ too. But what's really interesting about it is that the fans still hate it. All they care about online is, oh, we need Peter with MJ. We need Peter with MJ. They had a really long, I'm pretty sure the Nick Spencer run is like 70 issues, and he was with MJ. Like, they still hate it. And now they're like, oh, well, we want older Peter Parker who's with MJ and has kids. They gave Ultimate Spider-Man by Jonathan Hickman. They still don't like it. I'm telling you, Spider-Man fans on social media are one of the worst fandoms. I don't know how they go under the radar. Maybe it's because of the Zack Snyder cult, which we're going to get into that. I've kind of been going at it with the Snyder cult on Twitter, which I know, Hunter, that's what you're here to hear about, Hunter Iggy. But I'm telling you, ASM fans are among the worst. Like, at some point, you can't just keep breaking them up because Spidey had to be miserable. I just think that they should introduce a newer love interest. And that's kind of what they did with Shay. Shay was introduced in the Zeb Wells run, and she's been in some of the new Joe Kelly ASM Amazing Spider-Man run. But it doesn't seem like they plan on really seeing it through or letting it evolve. But Peter has had other women that he has dated other than MJ post One More Day breakup. Carly Cooper, for example. I know there's a couple others, but the main two are Shay and Carly Cooper. And Shay is the newest one. I don't care what we get for a Ruffalo film. I just want one. I still really like the Norton film. I grew up on the Hulk TV show. Yeah, I really like the Norton one too. I thought Edward Norton was great. And it's crazy because, like, I think, Kevin, obviously you're probably closer to me in age than a lot of the other guys, but I don't think that like the younger guys understand how big of a deal it was that Edward Norton played the Hulk. Edward Norton was like one of the biggest actors in the late 90s, early 2000s, and he's really, really talented. I think he just kind of like made a ton of money and probably was like, I kind of want to live a, less celebrity lifestyle. But I could be wrong about that, but we haven't seen him in anything in a really long time. But yeah, he was great. I would love to see another Hulk movie with him. I really liked Red Hulk too. It's either they stay together or don't get together at all. Like if Peter and MJ get back together in the 616 after the Paul situation, then they better not break up because then it's repetitive nonsense. I agree. If they're going to make them get back together, like they better stay together forever. And that's probably why they've avoided it, but they did kind of tease at it a bit on one of the earlier issues. I am going to pull that screenshot up and I'm going to send it to you, Hungry, and probably talk about it on the next show. But yeah, they definitely did tease it a bit when MJ broke up with Paul and she went to talk to Peter about it, and Peter was just not having it. Hulk can have a solo film. He has enough source material to be able to pull off a great solo movie. Yeah, that's fair. I just don't think it works into anything they're trying to do, and they're trying to cut back on the amount of content they put out. And since they're trying to cut back on the amount of content they put out, I don't think it's the right time for it based on what they're trying to do. That's all. I've heard bad things about the Spider-Man Twitter fans. Glad I'm not on that side of Twitter. Yeah, it is bad. They are awful. Yeah, I'm 42. I am 34. I'm going to be 35 really soon. So yeah, we're definitely close. All right. Norton Hulk is pretty much the most accurate Hulk we've ever gotten to the comics. Yeah, 100%. 100%. Especially like all of it. The story, the anger, the, trying to hold it together, all of it. You know what would be ballsy? If Peter and MJ get back together in 616 and then MJ dies, that I would be okay with because that's a different way to make Spidey miserable. That would be crazy. I just don't want it to be Green Goblin who kills MJ because I think that would be too repetitive and this would be too big of an iconic moment in Spider-Man history. This would be like a canon event that would be referenced in that scene from Across the Spider-Verse, That could be really cool. Oh, I would love to see if there's someone like Mr. Negative. I love Mr. Negative, man. He's such a great villain. All right. So one more Spider-Man thing, and then we're going to get into something really exciting. All right. Brad Winderbaum compared, where is this? Brad Winderbaum says the dynamic between Peter Parker, Harry, and Norman Osborn in Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man Season 2 feels like Succession. It's emotional. It's got real depth to it. If you haven't watched Succession, it is one of the greatest TV shows of all time. It is so good. It is so brilliantly written. It's inspired by the Murdoch family, loosely. The Murdoch family, for those of you who aren't aware or familiar, are Rupert Murdoch is the founder of News Corp, who owns Fox News and a lot of conservative news. And obviously, he is a very controversial figure in American media and politics. But Succession is loosely inspired by him, and basically it's a guy who owns a huge media company called Waystar Royco, something like that, and it's about how he's like getting old and kind of giving power to his kids, but he's like ruthless about it. So this is the kind of thing I love hearing. Granted, I don't think that the show, like when you think of Succession inspiration, I don't think about this show. I like this show. I thought it was great. But Succession is, it's just like levels ahead of what Brand New Day is. But I think that Brad Winderbaum, he's just a smart guy. He knows what to say. And I think this is a great show. And I think that one of the things that Marvel could do to grow Disney Plus is focus on animated content, because they really get to do whatever they want to do. And they don't have the limitations of everything that comes with making an MCU project. So I'm really excited about this. I really like the show. However, I do have to say, it is one of those shows that makes me say, yeah, it has a lot of propaganda that I really disagree with, but I enjoy the entertainment. And I hate when I say that. I hate when I have that feeling, because it's like, it's just, whatever. All right. I saw Den of Nerds do this, but you should do a Who Survives the Reset and Who Gets Recast. That's a great idea. You know what? I want to write that down so I don't forget. Sure. I agree with Josh, because how do you like to develop the Steve Rogers story? You need to have the supporting characters, and the two biggest supporting characters to Steve Rogers are Bucky and Sam. I'm not saying they need to come in right away with Steve, but they definitely need to follow 100%. Great idea, Hungry. I agree. It is a fucking great idea. All right. So now we're going to get into something really big. Let me just pull up. So, Avengers Doomsday post-credit scenes. The first scene, there's two. The first scene is set 8 years after the events of Avengers Doomsday and shows a new world in the year 1600. It features a green cloaked figure confirmed to be Doctor Doom, who has recreated a new world. The scene also includes Franklin Richards, Sue Storm, and a small blonde girl speculated to be Valeria Richards, confirming Doctor Doom's family. The year 1600 setting is noted to be inspired by the Marvel 1600 storyline, which influenced Jonathan Hickman's Secret Wars Battleworld. So this is something I love to hear, because I have no idea what most of it means. Like, I have read the Hickman saga 3 times. Okay. So like, when I go to see an MCU movie, I want to see something that is inspired by my favorite comics, but not a one-to-one adaptation, because that would be kind of boring. Like, I know the story, if you know Boy Cried Wolf, you really want to hear Boy Cried Wolf another time. You know what I mean? It's, come on. So, but the year 1600 is really interesting, because the Battle World, which is where Secret Wars takes place, and he uses the power of the Beyonder to take scraps from different planets that died in the incursions to put together a planet, and he becomes, Emperor Doom, where he is the ruler over the planet. Doctor Strange is his right-hand man, aka his bishop. The Thors are like the officers of the law. And Doctor Doom convinces Sue, Franklin, all of them, Reed's entire family, that he is really the husband and the father. So what happens from Reed's perspective is, when Reed builds a raft in case they don't survive the incursion, and take their, survivors from Earth 616 to wherever they're going to go, because at that point they didn't know where they were going. When he takes them they're very specific. They are very smart about who they bring. They're like, we need to bring people because they only have so much room on the raft. They're like, we need to bring people who we're going to need wherever we end up to continue life. We need to bring scientists. We need to bring builders. There was a huge debate over if they should bring Tony Stark or not because Steve Rogers was against it because Steve was so mad at Tony for blowing up other planets to save himself. And, Reed even said, like, Tony is the best builder of any of us, which is kind of ironic because a lot of people saw Doctor Strange 2, Multiverse of Madness, and they said Reed Richards is the smartest person in the world. And a lot of people's entire understanding of the Marvel lore came from very few sentences in that scene. And while that sentence is true, there is nuance to it. And Tony Stark is the greatest builder and innovator the world has ever seen. So, but yeah, anyway, they build that raft, and we'll get to the raft a little more in a second. But yeah, that world is inspired by like old times. I think I've showed before the concept art, and it looked very much like from Secret Wars. The fact that Doctor Strange is referred to as a bishop, makes you think of that old-timey world. So that's really interesting. It's also interesting that it's going to be 8 years. It's going to be a new world in the year 1600. So it is going to feel very Game of Thrones-esque in terms of the aesthetic and the way the government is set up and all that kind of stuff. Now, here's the second scene. This scene shows a group of explorers finding the raft lost in the ocean with its systems reactivating, revealing survivors inside. That would mean the raft survived for 8 years. The raft is described as a structure built with technologies from Reed Richards and Hank Pym. The leaked list of survivors includes, now this is really where it gets crazy, Reed Richards, Shuri, Star-Lord, Captain Marvel, Vision, Wong, the Young Avengers, Cyclops, Storm, Iceman, Sam Wilson, Beast, Spider-Man, Yelena, Bucky, Ghost, and U.S. Agent. Do you understand what this means? Because when I showed you last week the image, let me see if I still have that image, but there was an image I showed you of, here it is. Okay, hold on. This was Reed Richards when his family from 616 didn't make it onto the raft. Obviously, he was devastated. Now, if you realize on that list, they didn't say Sue Storm. They didn't say Johnny. They didn't say The Thing. They didn't say Franklin Richards. So it seems like they're going to go comic accurate for Reed Richards losing his entire family. And what do I always tell you about Reed Richards? What's one of the core traits of his personality is guilt. He is always, always guilty about something. If Reed Richards isn't guilty, it's not Reed Richards. So, yeah, it's kind of a bummer that Shuri is on the list because you'd think they would let her get killed off and just make room for T'Challa again. But nope, they're pressing on with Shuri and T'Challa. By the way, T'Challa was on the raft. Is he even in this photo? Yeah, that's him. Look, right behind Captain Marvel. That's T'Challa. So yeah, this is a bummer. Like, this is your opportunity to just kill off Shuri, and that way, when you bring back T'Challa, it's like, but it doesn't seem like that's what they're doing. Also, Wong, like, why is Wong on this list? That is insane. The Young Avengers. But the other really interesting piece here is that Cyclops, Storm, Iceman, Beast, a lot of the X-Men are on there. Now, I'm always going to keep it real. I got something wrong. I thought all the X-Men were going to die off in Avengers Doomsday. But if they're going to make it into the post-credit scene, that would indicate some of them survive, which is really interesting because if some of them survive Avengers Doomsday, does that mean some of the Fox X-Men are going to be included in the new X-Men when the MCU does its reset post Secret Wars? Unless they all die in Secret Wars. But one of the things you should know about Secret Wars is that Secret Wars isn't as big of a battle as Infinity War. Now, I'm sure they're going to work big battle scenes into it. It is the MCU. And there are battles in Secret Wars, absolutely. But it's not at the scale of Infinity War. Star-Lord's on there. I like Star-Lord. I'm happy about that. Captain Marvel is a surprise on that. You know, a lot of people thought they were going to pull away from Brie Larson. She's obviously very unprofessional with how she speaks, and it doesn't seem like fans really care for her, you know, now that we're out of the Me Too era, which obviously helped the movie do $1 billion. And I like the movie. Hey, don't come for me. I like that movie. I supported Brie Larson in that movie, okay? But yeah. All right. Now let's get to some comments because we just went through a crazy revelation. A battle world with a 1600s aesthetic sounds awesome. I agree. If I remember correctly, Battle World is a whole rewritten reality. Maybe that's how our MCU Tony that did the snap returns for Secret Wars because history was rewritten. You know, it is possible. It is possible. And, you know, Sue and them ended up on Battle World, which I forget how they did. Let me look that up. Hold on. Let's find out. So at the end of Avengers 44 and New Avengers 33, the lead into Secret Wars, Reed, Sue, Franklin, Valeria, and the Future Foundation are helping evacuate people to a life raft designed to survive the final incursion. But when the ultimate Earth, 1610, collides with Earth 616, Sue doesn't make it onto Reed's life raft. Only a small group, Reed, T'Challa, Star-Lord, Carol, Peter Parker, and a few others, pretty similar to the list we just went through, are actually survive inside it. Sue, Franklin, Valeria, and the rest are presumed killed in the collapse of the multiverse. However, when Doctor Doom steals the Beyonder's power right after that, he rebuilds reality from what fragments he can salvage. He doesn't bring back the true 616 Sue who died. Instead, he creates a new version of her along with Franklin and Valeria on Battleworld, believing he's giving them a perfect life. And that's how he did treat them. He's like, I gave you this perfect life on Secret Wars. A great point, Hungry. Because, yeah, If he could do that, he could bring back Iron Man. Would Doctor Doom bring back Iron Man? And that is an interesting piece as well, because the Russos have said that Robert Downey Jr. is the only person who could play Doctor Doom in the way they want him to do it, basically because he was Iron Man. Now, a lot of people had crazy theories. Give me 1 second. A lot of people had crazy theories that Doctor Doom is going to be some variant of Iron Man or whatever. Or, you know, his parents were adopted, or he was adopted, and he was really Victor Doom, and they tricked us the whole time, and he was never Tony Stark. I think all of that is straight garbage. Okay, I reject all of those theories. Now, but I still think it's very possible we're going to see Iron Man. Why? They're bringing back the X-Men. They're paying RDJ, 50 mil a movie. So he's already there. We are basically confirmed through every insider that Captain America's coming back. So why not Iron Man? They know it's going to sell tickets. So yeah. I'm so sick of Wong, Young Avengers, list goes on. Me too. Like, oh, I was in a Twitter chat, and there were so many people in it, but it was an MCU thing. There's some cool people in there, but most of it was obsessing over the lamest characters in the MCU and talking very dirty about like celebrity crushes. So it wasn't for me. But they were obsessed with the idea of a Young Avengers movie. And I was just like, how does anyone want a Young Avengers movie? That roster is garbage. Oh God, no. Fox X-Men post reset. I'm gonna crash out so hard if Hugh Jackman is still Wolverine post reset. I've gotten to the point where I'm sick of Hugh Jackman Wolverine. I wouldn't go that far that I'm sick of Hugh Jackman Wolverine, but I still would. I would crash out with you if it was him. Like, it doesn't make sense. If you want something to feel new and fresh, you can't bring old faces. You need new people. Everyone, I don't care who it is, every single X-Men character should be a new casting, a new actor. I don't care if it's Michael Fassbender Magneto. I don't care if it's Hugh Jackman Wolverine. I don't care if it is anyone, all of them. Like, you should, but I'm telling you right now, I do think they're going to keep. I think they'll probably make an exception for Ryan Reynolds. That's what I think they're going to do, and maybe Hugh Jackman. Hopefully, if they do that, we do get like two Wolverines, and we get a Wolverine. Oh no, because if they do that, what they're going to do is they're going to give us Hugh Jackman Wolverine, and then they're going to give us X-23 to be the main Wolverine, where Hugh Jackman's only really there for Deadpool and Wolverine 2 and maybe 3, but. And then, X-23, I can't stand. And by the way, I'm not really so crazy about Daphne Keane either. I never thought that she was that great. Like, I really didn't. I didn't like Logan. I hated Logan, actually. I really hated that movie. And she was decent. Don't get me wrong. She actually was great in Logan. I'll give her that. But I just don't like the character. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. If Reed's family can die and come back to life in Battleworld, what's to stop them from doing the same for Tony rather than the variant from another universe? It's true. And that's what makes what the Russos said so interesting. I'm going to look up what they said exactly. I messed up. I chose the Batcave because I was so excited to talk about DC stuff. And then I got these post credit reveals and started it with Marvel. Of course, I didn't change it earlier, but whatever. All right. So this is the quote. We can't explain that as it's part of the story, but there's nobody else in the world who could play this character the way he's about to. So a lot of people took that as, oh, this has something to do with him being Iron Man again. That was not what made me think he's going to be Iron Man again. A lot of people were like, oh, it's going to be infamous Iron Man. I saw people who claim they read comics say that Tony Stark is going to be infamous Iron Man when infamous Iron Man is Victor. He just takes up the mantle of Iron Man after Secret Wars when he tries to become a good guy. Wolverine until he's 90. LOL. Yeah. I mean, maybe it wasn't a joke. Maybe it was the X-Men strategy. Making X-23 as the main Wolverine is the equivalent to not recasting T'Challa and making Shuri Black Panther. I agree, by the way. I agree with that. But that's what makes me think it's possible. Because they didn't recast T'Challa and they're keeping Shuri as Black Panther, makes me think that they would think it's a good idea to make X-23 the main Wolverine. Pretty sure she's been the main Wolverine in a couple comic runs too, which is insane. Like, Wolverine is the most popular X-Men character. You don't mess that up. All right, so there's more to it. Hold on. So this suggests that these post-credit scenes indicate a different approach from Marvel compared to Infinity War and Endgame, where there were no post-credit scenes after Infinity War. I think there was a post-credit scene after Infinity War, so that was wrong. But I think it was there was. It was, what's his name? Nick Fury and Maria Hill, and they were kind of dealing with everyone being dusted in front of them. But anyway, these leaked scenes are seen as directly setting up the battle world for Secret Wars, offering a glimpse of the medieval style world. I think this is really exciting. The setup for Secret Wars. Secret Wars is one of the greatest comics of all time, as is Time Runs Out. I believe that this is going to work. I really do. Just because this is getting very direct to the Hickman story, and the Hickman story is gold. And listen, Hungry, I know you're not so happy about the roster, but I thought Fantastic Four was great. I thought Thunderbolts was great. I like the Fox X-Men. I'm not excited for them to come back. Like, that's one of the things that I'm a bit iffy about is the Fox X-Men. You know, there have been a number of retro characters, retro Marvel characters in the Multiverse Saga. I think the best use of them has been in No Way Home. No Way Home, Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire really added value to the story. They couldn't have had that third act be as great as it was without their inclusion in the movie. Whereas something like Deadpool and Wolverine, you really didn't need those characters in the void. You didn't need to have Blade there for 2 seconds. That didn't make the movie better. I think it influenced a lot of intellectual inferiors into thinking they saw a better movie. And then a couple months later, they watched it at home and they were like, wait a minute, this movie's actually not that great. I think I've told you guys, a kid I was friends with at the time when that movie came out told me right before I went and saw it that Marvel is back and that this movie is amazing. And then I watched the movie and I was really disappointed. But I didn't care to see, as much as I knocked her, I will say Daphne Keene's Laura, she actually did add to that movie more than the other characters. But most of them didn't need to be there. And Multiverse of Madness, they were there for like 2 seconds. They added a little bit of value to the story, but not like No Way Home. No Way Home, like Andrew and Toby really, really made the ending work cohesively. There's also apparently a rumor that there is going to be a multiversal Avengers element because there are some of the leaks have said that Loki is going to have a team and that team is going to fail, and the possibility of revisiting dead universes or having variants of characters from different timelines on Battleworld is also something that is apparently a possibility, which that I could see being true because obviously they just want to bring in retro characters, and you could easily do that on Battleworld because everyone gets pulled from wherever. So that could be cool. Don't get me wrong, like the Fantastic Four and the X-Men. I like the Fantastic Four and the X-Men, but I'm a bigger fan of the Avengers, specifically Iron Man, Captain America, Hulk, Thor, and T'Challa. So expect the Avengers, not an Avengers movie that's secret. I expect the Avengers, not an Avengers movie that's secretly a Fantastic Four movie. It's fair. It's fair. I said the same thing last week. One of the things that's really interesting to me is that a lot of comics people don't really like the Avengers in the comics. And when it comes to the movies in the MCU, obviously everyone knows the Avengers. The Avengers, and when the MCU first started, they used the Avengers because they couldn't use the X-Men. They couldn't use Fantastic Four. They couldn't use Spider-Man. The Avengers were all they had. And they made the Avengers the most popular superhero team on the planet. And that's a real testament to Kevin Feige and Marvel Studios. I love the Avengers. When I was a kid, I read some comics, but not like the way I do now. My dad would take me to a comic store and I would pick up, I didn't know what I was buying. I was just like, oh, do you have Batman? Do you have Spider-Man? Like the guy, I was a kid, he would give me what I got and that was it. I think the one run that I ever fully read as a kid was Batman No Man's Land. And that was because I bought the graphic novels before I went to summer camp with my dad. But the other ones I would read like an issue and I'd be lost because I didn't realize it was like issue 3. And I only had issue 3. I didn't have issue 2. I didn't have issue 4. It was just the one I bought at the store that day. But then I got into comic books a lot, and that was after I was big on the MCU. So that point, I went in wanting to read Avengers stuff, and I read Hickman. I didn't really know who Jonathan Hickman was. I had no idea. I was just like, I heard this is a good Avengers run. This is what I'm going to read. Imagine you watch a movie called Justice League, and instead of Bats, Supes, Wonder Woman, Flash, Green Lantern, you see characters like Nightwing, Starfire of the Titans, Mr. Terrific, Plastic Man of the Terrifics, etc. Yeah, that's a valid point. It's a valid point. The reason they're doing it is because the Avengers titles sell tickets, for better or worse. Um, the question is it going to work? And when I say it's going to work, take your own perspective and feelings on the matter. Hungry, I'm talking to you specifically right now. Take your own feelings and perspective of the matter out of the equation for a second. And just think two things. Number one, are most of the fans going to like this movie? And number two, is it going to be successful? Because at the end of the day, that is what Marvel cares about. Whether it's called Avengers, Fantastic Four, X-Men, that's what they care about. And that's why they're calling it Avengers, because they think that's going to help sell the most tickets. I've always been a bigger fan of Spider-Man and the Avengers more than X-Men and Fantastic Four, even before the MCU was a thing. See, I always thought the Avengers sounded cool when I was younger. I didn't know much about them. But I was big on the X-Men because I grew up with the Fox X-Men movies. I was huge on Spider-Man. Also, like growing up in the 90s, we had Spider-Man animated series. We had X-Men animated series. We didn't have an Avengers TV show. Like, it's crazy because now I see there was an Iron Man show in the 90s. I don't think I ever saw that on TV as a kid. I didn't even know it existed. And that's a fair point too. That's a fair point too. Are most of the fans going to like the movie and be successful? Yes, but not for the right reasons. They are using an Avengers comics, but they changed all the characters around, which is crazy. You know, like Namor should be bigger. Maybe it should have been called Illuminati, and it should have been more Illuminati focused. All right. Now let's get to DC. So Black Hand is in the Lanterns show. Okay. Black Hand, William Hand, is the avatar of Necron. And he is a villain that is really famous for Blackest Night. And that's really the story he's famous for. He's not like a real recurring villain. You know, Thanos is probably more recurring than he is. But when you think of Thanos, you think of, in terms of comics, you think of Infinity Gauntlet and Infinity War. Whereas in DC, when you think of Black Hand, you think of Blackest Night. I'm pretty sure Atrocitus is casted as well. I meant to check that. Atrocitus, DCU actor. Let's see. Yes. So Atrocitus is also confirmed for Atrocitus is also confirmed for Lanterns. Now, whereas Atrocitus is a more recurring villain, you know, he is the Red Lantern, like the head of the Red Lanterns. But I'm telling you right now, Black Hand would not be in this movie, in this show, if they weren't doing Blackest Night, which is interesting. Maybe they're going to do some of it. Maybe they're going to show him at the end. And, you know, I really think Sinestro Corps War was really integral to that run before Blackest Night came, because Blackest Night is a prophecy that basically when the whole world started, it was at first dark, and then the White Light came, and then the Guardians. But the Black Lanterns, Necron, their prophecy is that they're going to make the universe dark again, and they are going to put the light out. And that's why they raise the dead, and the dead who are resurrected, but not fully resurrected, they're like zombies in a way. They go after the heroes, and they go after those on Earth. They go after the lanterns. And the only way to put out the Black Lantern is if the colors of the emotional spectrum, because if you're new to this, you should know that Green Lantern is not the only lantern. There's an entire spectrum, and the spectrum is all based on emotions. And the Black Lanterns are really powerful, and they can detect emotion. Their rings charge without necessarily needing to be connected to the batteries and all that. So the emotional spectrum comes together to extinguish the Black Lanterns, specifically Black Hand. I just think it's going to be really crazy if we get Blackest Night as the introduction for the Lanterns. Now, granted, there is an upside to this. The upside, obviously, is a lot because we'd be getting the sickest story ever. If it's going to be a series, they're going to have a lot of runtime to flesh that story out. And everyone is going to be super hyped on the Lanterns from the jump. When Jeff Johns wrote that run, that was like a huge turning point for Green Lantern. And Green Lantern comics have been very popular ever since. So much so, Jonathan Hickman said, one time they asked him if you would write a Green Lantern run, and he would said, Jeff Johns already did what I would need to do for that character. That's basically what he said. So, the interesting thing to me also is that I don't like that the next DCU movie is Supergirl. Superman, I loved it. Okay. I really did. But it didn't, 650 mil is good. It's not amazing. It's not doing so well on HBO Max. It did really well on digital when it released on digital. But we don't live in a world where Supergirl is going to perform better financially than Superman. And if people didn't watch Superman, what makes you think they're going to watch the girl version? I was listening to Josh from Den of Nerds, and he was talking about this, and he made the point well, if John Wick comes out, and then they make the ballerina, the female John Wick, and after it doesn't do well, and they say, well, of course it wasn't going to do better than John Wick because it's the female version. Well, then, why are you making it? And then he pointed back to Supergirl. And it's at some point, you got to be like, what are we doing? Because if you're starting a universe where your first two movies are, one of them does 650 and the next one's going to do under that, and then Clayface. And listen, I hope I'm wrong. I hope it does well, but I don't think I am going to be wrong. And I think the Lanterns is my most anticipated project. But is Lanterns going to be enough to keep this thing in motion? I don't think they're going to shut it down. That's not what I'm saying. But we need the DCU trajectory to remain upwards. Okay. Let's get some comments. I'm hungry. I'm going to get to your MCU comment after we do the DC. The question is Blackest Night going to be a big Justice League movie thing, or is it just the big thing for multiple seasons? And that's a good point. It could be multiple seasons. Jeff Johns basically saved Green Lantern 100%. Talk to my comic shop, getting the Jeff John Omni, slightly used but good condition for cheap. Awesome, bro. You are going to love it. The thing that's great about reading the whole run before Blackest Night is Sinestro Corps War. Like, that is going to introduce you to the concepts of the other lanterns and, the other like traits of that lantern. And, like the Star Sapphires are love, the blue lanterns are hope. The Green Lanterns are all about willpower and using willpower to overcome fear. So they all have their own unique traits. But the Sinestro Corps War, all the lanterns are at war with each other, where in Blackest Night, they all end up having to come together to fight the Black Lanterns. But yeah, like, listen, forget about for a second if this is about having the time to do it in a show or a movie. Movies are the main thing. Like, Green Lantern should have been a movie. Green Lantern should have been a movie. Supergirl should have been a show. And listen, I said that on Threads a couple months ago. Oh, they did not like it. They are very sensitive on Threads, and they love identity politics. And this all they can only see the world through that lens. So they thought, oh, you said Supergirl, a woman, should be a show, and Green Lantern should be a movie. You're a bad person. They didn't think for 1 second that maybe Superman just had a movie. Like, maybe they should do Green Lantern because Green Lantern's a bigger character and it's going to be different than Supergirl. And listen, I know Supergirl is going to be different than Superman. I know Supergirl is a different character. But do you think the person going to buy a movie ticket is thinking like that? Do you think the person that's going to buy a movie ticket is thinking that Supergirl is like kind of a wild one? Like, or do you think that they're just like, oh, it's going to be the woman version of Superman? Like the way people thought Ballerina was the woman version of John Wick. But in other good news, they're very confident in getting another season. And the HBO boss is also confident in the Lantern series getting nominated for Emmys. So it's not too shocking, but it looks well. I still need to see a trailer or something because it's business. And they love to tell us how great everything's going to be until it comes out. And then we all, But I do think Lanterns are going to be really good. I really do. Hal Jordan should have been the main Green Lantern and not Jon Stewart. The internet woke my that's racist. And I'm like, it's like maybe because he's the one that's been around for longer and he's the one that, built the Green Lantern Corps. Like, he is the main Green Lantern. But yeah, no, they can't think that way. So there's something else that's interesting. And this is what throws me off a little bit, is that Josh from Den of Nerds tweeted this hat. And he said, so this is from the official DCU Lantern show. A Redditor made a video pointing out that this might tease the center, and WB forced him to take it down. If the center is in this too, like, I don't know. I just don't think that the center is going to be the main villain. I just don't see them having Black Hand and Atrocitus and then having the center be the main villain. I also think Warner Brothers and they are very, very quick to copyright things. They copyright strike. I've had the most random things copyrighted strike from Warner Brothers. So I don't think it's that big of a deal, but I at least wanted to have it represented on the show. Let's see what else we got. Oh, forgot about that. I Pray Supergirl is a big hit. There was a group of teenage girls that went nuts when she appeared on screen at one of my showings of Superman. That's great to hear. That's great to hear. You know, people did go nuts when she appeared on the screen when I was seeing it too. So maybe it does. If we get 3 seasons of Lanterns with enough Hal Jordan, then I'll be happy. Yeah, it is annoying that Hal's not the main Green Lantern though. Like, listen, I like John. He's a great character, but he's not Hal Jordan. Hal Jordan's got, like, he built the Green Lantern Corps. Blackest Night is Hal Jordan. Sinestro Corps War is Hal Jordan. Parallax is Hal Jordan. You know, Fractured Spectrum, Hal Jordan. Like, it's not John Stewart. And, you know, sometimes switching the characters isn't as simple. Sometimes a story works so well because it works so well for that character. I could see the center play a role, but not the main villain. I mean, I don't know. Casual's going to think when they hear the main villain is a floating island. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You know, they're going to think of the Galactus being a cloud. Yeah, I remember when they did that. All right. So let's get to your MCU comment, Hungry. Not sorry to say this, but yeah, I'm not a fan of the MCU anymore. I actually really liked him. I thought he was great. I didn't like what they did with Talo Khan. I think it was very obvious why they did it. I didn't like it, but I thought that actor really, really did a good job. So I got to disagree with you on that. Now, Michael Waldron, who's a big Marvel writer, not comics, MCU, says that Glenn Powell should play Nova in the MCU. He'd be a pretty good Nova. Now, this is really interesting because usually these types of comments come from fans or actors trying to get the role. It's very rare you hear someone like Michael Waldron. I don't even know if you could really call it fan casting because Michael Waldron is a lot more than a fan. But it begs the question, is Nova coming soon? Nova's a great character. You know, I used to think that Nova was kind of whack. And then I read Annihilation. And then I read, well, I'm reading it now, Imperial, which is a Hickman comic that's ongoing right now. It's incredible. But Nova's a really, really cool character. You know, he is kind of cocky, like badass. And he pairs really well with Star-Lord. And that's kind of like the team up going on in Imperial. And I could see that working really well. And I do think they want to keep Star-Lord around because the Guardians of the Galaxy have been so successful. Obviously, Chris Pratt is a huge star now. And if Chris Pratt or Star-Lord was on the Raft, you know, it holds weight who was on that Raft because those are characters that obviously are Marvel sees as valuable. So I do think it's possible we could see Nova paired up with Star-Lord in some form, or just in some form post Secret Wars. And I would like to see that. I kind of hope they go back in time and do a season 2 of Lanterns with a younger Hal, jump back in time a bit. You know, it like that's what I love about the idea that the show the DCU is pre-existing and it's been around for a long time before the events of Superman, because they could do something like that. They could do a time jump to the past and tell the story of something that happened. I would love to see that too. That would be really, really cool. There is a cool run. It's called Secret Origin, and it's not the beginning of the Jeff Johns run, but it's in the Jeff Johns run, and it is like the Hal Jordan Green Lantern origin, and it is sick. So yeah, I would love to see something like that. Man, Glenn Powell would have been a great DCU younger Hal Jordan. I know you don't like fan cast, but Glenn looks like Hal is the right age and has the personality for it. He basically played Hal in Top Gun. No, I 100% agree. I thought the same thing. If they do that, then a film or show set in, say, the 90s, the younger actor could play Hal then to tell those stories. So that would be really cool, you know? Um, I like the idea of a 90s setting too. That just sounds so cool. Maybe Hal had to deal with the Blackest Night prophecy in the past, and now years later it returned or something cool like that. The past affects the present. Yeah, that could be cool. I actually like that idea because that's kind of an original, story from Blackest Night, which I think would be really cool. You know, a lot of people are talking about Salvation, Planet Salvation, obviously, because that's what we saw in the end of Peacemaker. I got to tell you, I'm not sure that Planet Salvation is going to be a huge part of the story. I just don't like, because here's the thing: Superman and Lex Luthor are going to be working together, which means, at least not to Superman's knowledge, Lex Luthor is going to be putting metahumans into the Planet Salvation prison. And James Gunn said that, the Peacemakers helped set up Man of Tomorrow. And I don't know. I just feel like there's so many times they say, oh, this is going to play into that, and this is going to play into that. I'm not saying Planet Salvation isn't going to be part of Man of Tomorrow, but I don't think it's necessarily going to be such a big piece. If that makes sense. It does. I know it makes sense. All right. I'm going to give it another minute, and then I'm going to shut it down. Oh, I'm shocked tonight. I feel like Gunn is going to retract what he said about Peacemaker being so important and make sure that Man of Tomorrow, the only movie you need, is Superman 2025. He basically did say you don't need to watch Peacemaker to watch Man of Tomorrow. And that's one of the reasons I think. Like, I do still think Planet Salvation is going to play a role, but I don't think it's going to be a big role. I think it's going to be referenced. I think it's going to be used for something quick, and it's going to be like out of the picture really, really quickly. I really do. I think it's sending a lot of people down like crazy theories, and a lot of people are firing from the hip. But like I don't think it's the biggest deal. I really don't. Good stuff. Pumped to get the Johns on in the next few days for Lanterns prep. Yeah, bro. Let me know how you like it. I know you're gonna love it. It's sick. It really is sick. Oh man, Green Lantern's the coolest. I can't wait for the Lantern show, man. It's crazy we don't have like a good Green Lantern movie to watch. But with this show coming out, it does feel like people are actually getting really hyped on Green Lantern right now, which is really cool to see. Feel vindicated because I've been a Green Lantern fan for so long. And like, so many people are just like, don't get it. Since you read my Brave and the Bold, oh yes. So let's go through it. Yeah, so listen, I think it's actually pretty cool. I like it. I don't know how I feel about Tim Drake reminding Batman about his no-kill rule, but I don't think it's like a controversial choice like Batman killing. But I actually do really like the blend of what was it? Batman and Son and Death in the Family, and Tim Drake like dying. That was actually really cool. I got AI notes on it. Hold on. I'll read it. So Hungry Almighty sent in his idea for the DCU Batman movie. The premise is a story inspired by Batman and Son and Death in the Family, focusing on Batman, Tim Drake, Damian Wayne, and Red Hood, Jason Todd. Batman and Tim Drake have been partners for 3 years. There's a montage of them fighting Gotham's villains, which establishes a seasoned, fantastical Batman. Talia al Ghul arrives with Damian, introducing him to Batman. Conflict. Damian is arrogant and violent. Batman struggles to control him. Batman investigates a mysterious new threat, Red Hood, while Tim mentors Damian. There's character dynamics because Tim teaches Damian's Batman's philosophy of justice, not vengeance, and they begin bonding, becoming like brothers. But Damian ends up killing a goon to save a hostage, angering Batman, which Batman's rage frightens Damian and humbles him. And then Red Hood is revealed to be Jason Todd. And eventually, Joker and Harley Quinn attack. Tim sacrifices himself to save Damian. While dying, Tim tells Bruce he loves him, Jason's alive, and to be kinder to Damian. Batman nearly kills Joker but stops, remembering Tim's last words. Resolution. Tim dies, Gotham mourns. Batman swears off sidekicks. Damian offers to be Robin. Batman angrily rejects him. Damian steals Tim's suit to honor him and fight crime alone. Ending teases a sequel where Batman must find Damian and become a better father. And I love the end part because that reminds me of the Batman and Son movie sequel when wasn't one of the Talons or something trying to mentor Damian and kind of like, set him down a bad path, and Batman had to go rescue him. So it seems like that could work for a sequel for this too. Pretty fire idea, bro. You actually crushed it. I liked it a lot. All right. But that's it for that. I got to go because I am so exhausted. Thank you for the support. I'm only doing once a week now because I'm going to be doing more pre-recorded content, and I just have too much going on with work to do twice a week. But I'll be back next week on Monday. Peace.